I write a column for a daily newspaper. In other words, I'm an endangered species. Daddy! With 3 deadlines a week, I'm always looking for a good story.
Does anyone actually read the newspaper anymore? Mr. Wren?
Wow.
Sorry.
What brings you to the party? It's Porter Wren.
Well, hello, Porter Wren.
Did you roofie me last night?
No. There's something that I would like to show you.
Is this about your husband's death?
Yes.
Simon Crowley was found in the rubble of a demolished building.
They still can't figure out how he got in there. The place was all locked up, and he didn't have a key on him.
Why me?
You found that little girl. Unless there was another reason why you came by.
What can I do for you fellas?
You, sir, are having an affair with Miss Crowley.
You liked watching me, didn't you?
She's psychologically clever, you know.
What's going on? Tell me the truth.
I've told you everything, I promise you.
I had a strange patient come visit me today.
Oh, yeah?
She was very beautiful.
Never make contact with her again, you understand?
Open the door.
Mommy!
A man forced his way into the house with a gun.
I will not let my children be a part of this, Porter.
If you do not call off your goons, I will go down in a glorious ball of fire, and I will take you with me.
Are you really gonna play this kind of game?
It's only a matter of time.
You scare me when you say that. I'm gonna be with you until I die. How do you feel about that?
Terrifying.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on this beautiful and stylish neo-noir film.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. I have to ask, I feel like film lovers and storytellers really love the noir genre. They love a really good mystery. This is your first feature, right?
Correct.
What was it like for you to sort of dive into this genre? At one point, I think it could be said that like doing a mystery, everything is sort of laid out for you. But then if you're a fan of the genre, if you know cinema history, it can be a lot of weight on your shoulders as well.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I didn't feel the weight, so that was good. Right from the top, I had read the book Manhattan Nocturne, written by this man, Colin Harrison. And I just fell in love with it in a way that it just possessed me. And I was like, I have to make this into a movie. And I love the noir genre. And what I loved about the book and what I hope to preserve in the movie was that this is sort of noir 2.0 in a way. It has all the richness and all the history of the great noirs of the 40s and even smacks of 70s and 80s noir. But it really has its own spin on it in a way, in that it's very contemporary and very much, it's got a lot to say, and it's very real. Adrien's character, Porter Wren, as a,
Great name.
Yeah.
Just a great name, Colin.
Plays an investigative reporter, but it's very real. He's a happily married family guy, and this is the kind of situation that you would never expect to get into, but you could actually get into this situation. I think that's what excited me so much.
Adrien, what excited you? What got you involved in it? Was the name Porter Wren at the top of the script?
That sold me right away. Now, let me just elaborate a bit on what Brian was saying, which was something that was brought up to me that I love, is that, and this is in the novel as well, but that there's something beautiful about the storytelling in both of a character that is about storytelling, and that he's an investigative reporter at a newspaper, and that is kind of somewhat in the past as we live in the very modern world, and we are on our phones and have access to all kinds of information at every minute, and reading something in print is a bit in the distance, and how New York is also transitioning, and how the film that we made is it's really precious to me, which is part of the question of why I gravitated to this. It's like one foot in the past and one foot in the future, and clinging to that and yearning for the new. And I think that's so beautifully told, and Brian did such a beautiful way of expressing that. And there's a richness in New York that is very much a character in this film.
And you've even sort of updated the novel a little bit with a couple of with a little bits of language and references. At one point, I think your character says, "People tweet at me as far as I know, but I don't know anything about it," which has a lot to do with who your character is and how long he's been.
I didn't even have Twitter at the time when I uttered those lines, so now I do, but I'm not very active. But the idea of me saying, yeah, people, I believe, tweet at me.
You actually say Twitter, which was kind of funny
Twittered at
because he
me.
wasn't
They
using
twittered at me.
vernacular properly.
Yeah, right. They Twitter at me.
Well, in many ways, a tabloid columnist today doesn't need to be investigative because cops and people who are on the scene of things that happen with celebrities will tweet about it, will put it somewhere, and then a tabloid columnist will just post the headline that's written about it. You don't need a sort of investigative reporter approach, so you are kind of this old school reporter living in contemporary times.
Maybe, but I think there was also a pride in the kind of literary craftsmanship and something that he yearned for, maybe at least my interpretation of a bit more of that, you know, expressing himself and the creativity of telling those stories. So not only seeking them out and finding the truths, but then conveying that with this language, which was a noir in and of itself, right? The writing style of a reporter, stylized approach of interpreting the city in a column and having an audience keyed into that. I think that's its own storytelling. So all the layers were very intriguing.
Colin, the book was first published in the mid-'90s, right?
1996.
1996. And have you always been someone that's obsessed with noir, obsessed with mystery writing? Was this something that kind of...
I'm obsessed with New York and crime and what goes on between men and women and power and money and the swirl that is New York City. And in this case, it took a sort of very noir turn. The city is always noirish, whether you want to believe that or not. And Brian and Adrien did a beautiful job of finding that and making it and putting it into the movie. So yeah, noir is never going to leave us. We are noir.
What did you think when you found out that it was going to be made into a movie? Did you work with Brian at all on the script or talk to him about it?
Well, Brian and I go way back on this project now, and it's been nothing but fabulous. And once the movie was really going to happen, that was great. I visited the set a couple times. It was fun to watch these guys do their stuff, and it's just been terrific.
Brian, when you set out to make a sort of neo-noir or noir 2.0, how far back do you go in terms of influences? Do you go back, or do you try to make this completely and uniquely your own?
I guess it's a little bit of both. I do go back, and go back pretty far. I mean, The Third Man is a favorite film, and just love everything about that movie and tried to steal pieces of that to put into this. But at the same time, you do want to make it your own because, you know, times have changed so much. And this is a very unique story. I think that people have a certain idea of the story based on the trailer, but when you get into the movie, you see that there's a lot more there than what the trailer
It's much
reveals.
more personal, the story within the film. I mean, I think the trailer gives off a sense of corruption and crime, but when you sort of get into the film, I was shocked or surprised at how personal it was for each character, how it was about their pasts, how it was about their relationships.
Yeah, it's a lot more
and intimacy.
character-driven. It's a lot more character-driven, still being inside a very sort of complex plot, but it's very character-driven, with Adrien's character really just being the focal point and the lens all the way through. That's a very noir convention, is to have it be very point of view from the lead character, and Adrien's character really does sort of take you through this strange story.
Adrien, you know, I asked Brian about influences going into something like this because the noir genre, as we said, is something that people know so much about. The sort of investigative reporter, or be it the detective, be it the actual reporter for a newspaper, is something that we've seen in noir films as well. Was that something that you look back on past representations, past people who've played those parts, or did you try to sort of, again, make it uniquely your own and not have any sort of weighted representation on you?
Well, I have a unique situation which has shaped much of my life, and me even becoming an actor, me having an interest in magic before I was an actor, which led to me playing Houdini, which has now led to me playing a reporter, which is that my mother was a staff photographer at the Village Voice my whole childhood. And at that time, the Village Voice was really an amazing paper. It was, you know, fantastic writers and, you know, great columns and, you know, really wonderful liberal paper. And in the heart of New York, it really represented New York. And my mom had assignments to photograph, you name it, you know, from Basquiat to, you know, incredible artists and fascinating stories. And, you know, I'd find myself constantly on assignment with her because, you know, we didn't have a babysitter, and I'd be traveling with my mom. And her perspective, her interpretation, her seeking out the ghosts of this city and telling those stories is what shaped so much of my interpretation, my attraction to certain roles, my sensitivity to the everyman and the flawed human beings that are ever present in this world, and representing them and attempting to represent them truthfully has all come from my experience in this city and growing up in a newspaper, like basically at a newspaper and on assignments. And so I'm the perfect man for the job, basically. And I'm a New Yorker, and this is a real New York film. I don't think we could have made this movie anywhere else. It couldn't have this feeling. It couldn't have given us this feeling. And really, Brian did such a remarkable job, and the material is wonderful. It's an amazing novel. The screenplay was one of the best screenplays I've read, and you know, I've done everything that I could to help support Brian's vision of this movie. I've helped raise financing for this film as far as China, and really made this a priority in my life. And I'm really happy with all the collaborative efforts that have gone into this film, and I think I'm very excited finally that it'll be out on Friday.
I have like 3 questions for you coming off of everything that you just said. I'm sorry to do that to you. The first one is, what was the coolest assignment your mother ever took you on?
I think I remember her telling me about Timothy Leary as I was hanging out with Timothy Leary, and was probably like 6 or 7, and didn't quite understand what LSD was, but thought the guy was really cool and really interesting. And you know, it's these kind of things. And then I've played war photographers in other films, and I've referenced, you know, great war photographers that I've known, and Gilles Perez, and people that are really talented. You know, I think the most impactful that I could say was not just an assignment, but it was one of her coworkers was Howard Smith, who was a writer at The Voice, who loved magic, and part of, I think, his responsibility at The Voice was kind of reviewing these new gadgets, or he was obsessed with gadgets and things, and at a 4 or 5-year-old kid hanging out at the office, he had the coolest office with, like, what those fiber optic lights. You remember those things? There's probably, you guys are too young for it, but before you had anything modern and cool and full of lights, these little things were like, remember those? They were amazing. So at 4, that was like the future. So he had fiber optics. So he had all these gadgets, and then he had a love of magic, which then propelled me into, I'd learn a trick in his office, and I'd go around and torment all my mom's coworkers and come up with a routine, and then, which led to acting, which led to understanding improvisation and creating a character and sleight of hand, and the illusion that magic translates to the illusion of becoming a character, and then you believing that I am someone other than myself, and in fact me believing that to a certain extent.
You mentioned also raising funds for the film. Is that something that is just more and more of a reality as an actor now, that if there's a project that you believe in, you are going to sort of be tasked with raising the funds for the movie in terms of...
I think it depends on what your priorities are, and I'm a bit older now, and I also have a yearning for more kind of creative involvement and ensuring that the films that I work on go down the trajectory that we all hope for it to go forward with. And I have a lot more experience than a lot of young producers because I've been on film sets for 3 decades. And I think also there's a difference between an actor being given some say on a film because of a certain stature they've achieved, or actually being in a position to protect the film and coming with the right objectives to push things forward. And then raising financing is an inevitability in this world, as far as if you want to make independent movies. If you do studio movies, then you're in other people's hands. But if you want to help a storyteller make a film that is challenging, that is not a formula that is instantly bankable, then you've got to be resourceful, and that's why I started Fable House, which is my production company, and I want to make really interesting movies and compelling characters for me to portray, not wait for somebody else to do that. Unfortunately, Brian had this epic role, and I'm just a part of the process of trying to bring it to fruition, which we've actually accomplished.
Absolutely. And you said the phrase sort of seek out the ghosts of New York City, and I'm curious for the two of you, Colin, for you, who you write about New York quite frequently, do you find that many people think that New York has become very corporatized. It's become in itself not the city that it used to be. Do you feel like people seek the ghosts out even less than they used to?
I think if you live here for any period of time, you find the ghosts find you. You know, Brian and I were talking before about just walking along 8th Street out here, and we both have ghosts on this very street that we didn't even think about until we walked
Me
here.
too.
I used to work in this building.
So
Brian has ghosts literally in this building, huh?
I was on the 10th floor, MTVU, like 10 years ago.
just that the city is infinitely complex. It's being recreated as it's torn down continuously. Anybody who lives there gets to know people, has their life story intersect with the geography of the city, and that's always happening. And the corporate kind of overlay is, yeah, it's here, but people live in the city. It's a real place, and it's dense with opportunity and intrigue and excitement, and that's never going to stop. And that's kind of what the movie takes off from.
Yeah. I always worry about that because when I first moved to the city, which was like 10 or 12 years ago, I was obsessed with like Mars Bar and the Lower East Side and all these things that were so referential of like late 70s, early 80s punk in New York City. And that's gone, and CBGB's is gone, and so much of that element of that area is gone. And I don't hear anybody like 10 years younger than me moving out here being like even looking for that, like even looking for those ghosts anymore. Kind of bums me out a little bit. I wonder if you think about that at all when you sort of making a movie like this.
Well, I think one of the things that was so just fantastic about the way this came together was being able to cast Adrien in this role, because Adrien just brought all that, We sat down in our first meeting, and, it was just clear that he brought the New York to Porter Ren. And so I can't wait for you guys to see his performance. He's amazing in this movie. He's really amazing. And he just is New York, and he just brings all that. So it ends up being a layer on the film where you don't have to point out all those things super specifically, because it's just baked right in with his performance.
Do you feel that
There's I mean, look, it's a different city. We all know that. We've all witnessed that. But then, like I miss CBGB's too. Like I actually got to perform in CBGB's in Summer of Sam. I did a show, and we pulled kids off of St. Mark's Place, and they were spitting lungies on me as I was like screaming into a microphone, and I spit back at them, and it was just really disgusting, but lots of fun and
Beautiful.
Exciting. But that stuff exists. It's just not what we knew it as, right? It's different, but there are whole areas in Bushwick and Richmond Hill and areas that you wouldn't ever be in that now, eke out whole new lives for young artistic people that can't quite afford living in the East Village, but they're there, and that's transforming, and so I embrace all of that. And this city's not, that energy is not going anywhere, and the melting pot of what New York has always been is still there. And you hop on a subway, and it's still fucking subway and full of characters and full of both beauty and horror. Every other seat.
Absolutely. For the record, you brought up Summer of Sam. I will say that when I saw Summer of Sam in high school, the scene of you performing Baba O'Reilly was one of the first of many transcendent moments I had with music in a movie. That's such an incredible montage within that film. I think one of Spike Lee's best, by the way, too. Going back to the film and depicting the city. Actually, Yvonne Strahovski, is that Strahovski, excuse me. Her performance is amazing, and she's absolutely beautiful. How did you go about casting her alongside Adrien Brody? Was there sort of screen tests or chemistry tests or anything?
There were no screen tests or chemistry tests.
No chemistry tests.
No chemistry tests required.
There was chemistry, but we didn't test it until he was rolling.
No need to test.
Fortunately, there was.
That is obviously a super important role in the movie. It's a very important role. So we were very careful about who we chose in that role. And you know, when the idea of Yvonne came up, something just clicked. And we sent her the script, and she read it over the weekend, and we had a Skype on Monday, and she was in. It was just a perfect match, and the two of them together couldn't be better.
She's a really great, and I was saying this in the green room, a really great subversive take on the noir femme fatale, you know. And I think that she does it really well because you can sort of her tone shifts at a certain point in the movie that alerts you to what's happening.
Yeah,
without giving anything away.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people will be very surprised by her performance. Because it's not your average femme fatale, and that's in the book that way, and it's what I brought out in the movie is that, and we would talk about her as femme fatale 2.0, in that, you know, femme fatales are usually the cold black widow, ice in the veins, you know, ready to slit your throat when you fall asleep.
With no reason usually. Too.
Right, or just for her own ends, you know, and that's not this character at all. This is not Fatal Attraction, despite what some of the chatter on line is. It's not that. She's not a crazy Glenn Close character. Caroline is actually a warm person who you could know in your real life, and she has a very interesting character arc, and it's one of the things that I'm most happy about actually with the movie is the pairing of Yvonne and Adrien and that relationship. I think it's unique.
They do a great job of peeling away the secret, and it's fun to watch Adrien understand what the secret really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to turn it over to the audience for some questions. First question right here. You, sir.
How's it going, guys?
Hey.
First of all, huge fan of Adrien. My question is for Adrien, by the way. Has your approach and prep for all the roles that you do evolved in any way over the course of your career, or has it stayed like the same path?
That's a very good question. I think it's evolved. He asked me about my approach to my work and if that's changed somehow over time. I think my approach to the way I approach work has changed in a way. Experience builds comfort, and not complacency, but an understanding of the pressures that are inevitable, that are there on the day, which are always there, no matter how good you are, no matter how prepared you are, especially if you're making an independent movie, shit goes wrong and does not work in your favor. And to be a professional, you have to surmount those obstacles every moment in the movie. No matter what's going on personally in your life, no matter where there is a potential disagreement, no matter where there is obstacles and people in your eye line, no matter what those things are that unnerve you, you have to deliver because it's in the movie and it's permanent. And nobody, when they see the movie, cares what you were going through or what the process was like. They want to be transported to that place, and that's my responsibility. So as you get years, a lifetime of experiencing that, you have a manual, you have resources that are unexplainable to overcome those obstacles. And most of the work, and when I reference, my methodology or approaching a role or a character as a method actor, it's to do what I can to immerse myself or to try and tap into those truths so that I feel something and that I can convey something that feels truthful to me rather than try and fool you. I don't want to act. I'd rather try and connect to what I understand about that individual and what I understand about the character and the eyes that I'm looking into. And this, sometimes you're fortunate where you have great people to collaborate with that respect that process, that know how to nurture that process, and sometimes you don't. So each endeavor is a different set of challenges and requires a different workload and requires a different attention to different things. In this case, I was also saddled with being a producer, which is an early stage of me producing. But being a hands-on producer with Brian, who's also saddled with being a producer and a filmmaker. And there are a lot of problem-solving equations that have to be dealt with while you're immersed in a character, which was very challenging. But we prevailed. And so there's always something different, as I elaborate on it. But the reality is, it doesn't get easier, but you get more comfortable with the turmoil and with what that process is, and somehow you become stronger each time because you faced. It's like if you've never had a fight and you get into a fight, it's terribly traumatic and it's mostly the emotional thing, but the pain goes away. If you get your ass kicked a few times, then you realize it's a drag, but you get through it.
I'm curious, did you find that being a producer almost helped you with sort of being saddled with the chaos and everything going on set as an actor? That at a certain point when you're just performing and you're just an actor, you can only have questions sometimes for what everybody else is doing behind the camera. Whereas if you're the producer, you sort of know everything that could be going wrong, that people are taking care of, and you can kind of ease back a little bit rather than just sort of be like, well, why don't we have that thing anymore?
You never ease back, and even if I have not been credited as a producer, I'm doing a lot of that work. I'm involved with a lot of problem solving anyway on a smaller independent movie. I've always been that way. I've always been very hands-on. I've helped problem solve. I try to not create a problem. I try to help figure out a way to find a solution. And if I have the insight and someone doesn't seem to have that insight, I'm going to voice that. There's a legitimacy to that when you are the producer, or if you do have greater stakes in the overall thing. You do have this, you want the best anyway, but
there was a turning point where we looked at each other, where Adrien was doing producing work in the planning stages, but we hadn't declared him a producer, and there was that point where we looked at each other via Skype and said, "You're a producer. You should be a producer." And a real partnership evolves there in a way that doesn't exist when you just have an actor who's in a role and is like, "Good luck with that,"
Ryan brought me on as an actor originally, and we
ended
door
up changing. And
collaborating.
In terms of being able to change the hats between actor and producer, me between producer and director, and our third producer, Steve Klinsky, who. Between the three of us, we were able to solve all those problems and take turns with the different hats, so that Adrien could be more with the actor hat on set. I could be more with the director hat on set. Steve could always keep the producer hat on, and between the three of us, we were able to do all that.
Absolutely. I've been such a hog. I think we only have time for one more question. Sorry, guys.
Hey, guys. I'm glad to see you here. I've got two short questions to Adrien. Adrien, you've got too many interesting and strong characters in your movie list. I can consider you as talented and real professional, master in your craft. Could you share your personal recipe, how to become a successful person in the life, at work that you do? And second question is about my one of my favorite movies with you. It's called The Jacket, right? Psychological one. In your opinion, like your point of view, how it's ended up? Like your character Jack Starks came back to his own time, or in the end of the movie, or he like was left and stuck in the future. Thank you. That's it.
God.
I mean, is this
that you saved the best for last. Okay, a recipe for success and an answer to what happens at the end of The Jacket, which I don't know which is more difficult to answer. I don't know. And I don't know if I have answers for you that are full answers. But I think I'm very blessed. I'm very conscious of my good fortune to be able to do what I love. I think the key is to first find something that you love and to pursue that. And to be okay with the outcome, regardless, because you've pursued it. That's already a success. If you say, I want to be an actor, or I want to be a musician, but there are millions of talented people who are way more talented than I am, who are way further along, I should not even bother. Let me just keep flipping burgers. There's no chance of fulfillment in your life. You can't have it. So it's better to, risk and fail, but not. I think the key is to find the confidence in yourself to pursue what you're passionate about, to hear your own voice, to tell you, this is important to me. Regardless what your mom and dad says, regardless what society tells you to do, whatever, That's the best advice I could give you. And then I didn't really have a great backup plan, but have something, so that you can carefully dance through that. And, most people cannot fulfill their ambitions fully. That's reality. But I feel that it is successful. If you will be successful if you've pursued it and you've cultivated it and you've educated yourself in a way and you've done the work and you surround yourself with the people that are interesting to you, then you're being successful in the process. And tenacity is another part of that, which I think we're all pretty tenacious people.
I read the book in 1999 and said I want to make it into a movie. It's 2016.
Right? And it's a necessity, unfortunately, to be tenacious. You have to be like a dog with a bone. When you latch on to something that is important to you and meaningful, you have to pursue it. And you have to figure out creative ways of achieving that. The Jacket was a long time ago, so I have to refresh myself on what happened to poor Jack Starks. But it was a complex journey. I like the ambiguity that is conveyed at the end of a movie. I hate to be one. First of all, I'm not the end voice, and I don't really know the exact answer of what happens. So I like that it lingers in your mind many years later, and that you wonder what happens to that character. And I think that's the way it should be.
Guys, when can people see Manhattan Night? How can they see it?
They can see it starting this Friday, the 20th. Yeah. Woo! You can see it in select theaters. If you're in New York City right now, go to the AMC in Times Square, you can see it. It's going to be in theaters across the country and on demand simultaneously. So see it in the theater and then go home and watch it.
Awesome.
See what
Guys,
you
thank you so much
that's
for
the way
being
to
here.
do it.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.